Hello, welcome to the first episode of the Tpas podcast. Extend a really warm welcome and a thank you for you taking the time to listen in. My name is Michael Hill and I'm the Business Development Manager at Tpas. I just want to give you a little bit of snapshot of what that means. So my role has many elements to it, but it majors in on developing the relationships with our contract and affiliate partners, all our commercial members, supporting the existing products and services that we provide to our members, considering and testing new services which might support our members now and in the future. But as well as that, I also deliver training and consultancy sessions at times and support our regional events across the country. So you've no doubt bumped into me, some of you, at some of our regional events. And some of our events such as the Tpas conference in July as well. Now, getting back to this podcast though, we felt that this first episode should rightly focus on something that sits right at the heart of everything that we do here. That is our National Tenant Engagement Standards. Now, these are something that we're really proud of. We're really chuffed to say that we're the only organisation who have a set of national standards. And although they're primarily created for our members, we're delighted and quite excited when other organisations reference and work towards them. That sort of tells us that we're in the right direction and we're getting something right. So today I'm going to take you on a virtual journey of the standards, an audio journey, I might add. I'm going to give you a little snapshot, give you a little bit of background and explain the ethos behind them. So let's move on with a little bit of background. So the first set of standards were released back in 2015. I'm sure you can agree, a different time with a different focus than where we are today. Those standards at the time sat beneath 6 broad themes. And if we're honest, they were of the time and reflected a sector that was trying but not really committing to tenant engagement en masse. There was still tremendously good examples of good tenant engagement, but there were quite a few organisations turning away from engagement and changing focus. So what happened to support a review and a relaunch then? Well, several things happened, but it's no surprise that mainly one thing happened, and that was the Grenfell tragedy and the following social housing green paper. Now, this was a game changer for the sector and all those working within tenant engagement. Engagement became, important again. It was a hot topic. It was sort of back in fashion, if you like. So I think for our standards, they needed to reflect that changing mood in social housing. So the result is, after a process lasting around 5 months, which included online surveys and a series of focus groups, we settled on our new standards. Now we've 7 themes, and beneath each theme sits a number of specific standards. There are 42 in total. Now, as I said, I'm not going to go through all 42 in this podcast. I'm going to give you a snapshot as we go through, so don't worry too much. That they're all bound to one overarching theme, and that's one of culture. Now, we're talking about a positive culture of support for engagement. It's not just about activities. I think I want to stress that. It's not just about doing loads of things. It's about the environment that those activities sit within. So we've seen many examples of wonderful structures, but without the direction, the purpose, and the meaningful acceptance at the top level, they really and generally run aground on rocky shores. You will see some very specific expectations throughout the standards, with some caveats too, to recognise that there is difference in the sector. But ultimately, we believe that what we've got here is what good looks like within these 7 themes. So these themes, we think these are the areas that if good engagement behaviour is encouraged and supported, great things can come from an engagement programme. So the 7 themes are governance, scrutiny, complaints, business and strategy, information and communication, resources for engagement, wider and community engagement. Now I'm going to walk through each theme to give you a flavour of the expectations, but they're the 7 broad headings. So governance. This is about the role tenants have at the decision-making structures of a landlord. It's not just about having a tenant board member, it's about the agreed role and acceptance that the role tenants can play. Now, we will see some differences, and we expect that because every organisation is just that, it's different. But this standard also looks to test out and see the transparency agenda within an organisation, how open they are to real challenge. It's about sharing risk, keeping tenants safe, and being honest about how the organisation is performing. So we're really quite proud of this standard and this theme, because we really think it really puts a squeeze on the sector to really test out how fully engaged and fully accepted the role residents plays in the governance of an organisation. So we believe that's where it all kicks off from, and that's where you can generally tell how effective an engagement framework is going to be from the level of acceptance that its governance arrangements have around its engagement opportunities. So the next theme is scrutiny. And as you might expect, this is one we hold dear. We hold it close to our hearts because Tpas were one of the first organisations who drove this agenda back in the late 2000s. So we want to see appropriate methods of scrutiny, appropriate models that have been agreed with tenants. This is about how scrutiny links into that governance and what happens when it gets there. So again, it's tapping back into this idea of it's okay to have these activities, but what happens when the recommendations and the findings go into that governance arena. That's where the difference will be identified. But this is also about how scrutiny is supported and resourced properly to help it achieve its aims. But then also we want to see the partnership working within organisations, how they're meeting targets and how they're creating positive outcomes. So there's a standard in this theme that really wants to test out how well a scrutiny model works with the other engagement opportunities of a landlord. Because ultimately, as far as we're concerned, scrutiny doesn't always work very well when it sits in silos. So as far as we're concerned, it's about how does that structure engage with the wider resident network. So the next theme is business and strategy. This is that nuts and bolts of engagement that sets out the types of behaviours we expect to see in those service reviews and strategic discussions. This is all that day-to-day general engagement that you see up and down the country. But this theme also wants to tease out and look for the commitment to support engagement in building safety agenda and developing the engagement strategy, and also pushing real deep into meaningful engagement in procurement. And as the next few months go along in 2020, you should see a little bit more of a drive between Tpas and a few of our partners in trying to really push home that meaningful engagement in procurement. And it's not just about selecting tap choices and colours of doors. This is about meaningful engagement in the procurement process. Within this theme, we're also talking about the clarity that the organisation shows in the activities it's going to use to engage residents. So we're really looking to press home landlords being really clear on how long an activity it's going to use to engage people is going to take, how much time of a resident is it going to take up, and what is that level of influence that it's going to sit at. Because it's really important that residents are clear on how much time and what and how meaningful will it be. So we're really looking forward to seeing how organisations tackle that. Now, the last one I'm going to talk about in this business and strategy is for really wanting to get some clear routes for feeding back outcomes to all who take part in engagement sessions. And I know that this is one that for anybody who's been around engagement for a long time will know that this is page 1 of the engagement manual, if you like. Closing the loop and feeding back to anybody who's been involved in an engagement activity is one of the things that is simple to say but doesn't always happen. And we really wanted to drive home real meaningful behaviours in this, and making sure that everyone feels valued when they take part in engagement activities. Now the next theme is complaints. Now this theme really ramps up and raises the ante on meaningful engagement of residents in that development, monitoring and reviewing of complaints policy and process. Now we know that in the past residents have been engaged in complaints, but it's not always been as from the start, if you like. So we know that it generally happens around when there's reviews, but we're really talking here about everything from the start. We want complaints, policies and processes to have been developed with residents, and keeping them part of that process too through that monitoring and reviewing. In here, we're setting out the expectations for access to complaints and also the learning from them. So that's making sure that, we're demonstrating what's happening and what we're learning. And we're outwardly telling people that as well. We're also here expecting regular recording and sharing with residents and, the results of our complaints and any of the learning points. And for the first time, what we're looking for here is some reassurance from landlords that speaking out won't bring negative consequences for residents. Many a time we've had conversations, I know I have in my working life, in engagement where residents are fearful of making complaints because they get put on a naughty list almost, or they get the feeling that they're getting put on a naughty list. And whether that's actual happened or it's just a fear, whatever we do, we've got to make sure, as far as we're concerned, that people feel comfortable to make a complaint if they feel it's valid. Now the next theme is information and communication. Within this theme, we're looking for some consistent behaviours in how information's put out there. We're looking for timely information that goes out to recognised panels to help them operate effectively. What we don't want to be seeing is information going out that doesn't give those recognised panels sufficient time to consider and formulate responses. Now we're talking about clarity in paperwork. We're talking about key points being summarised. This is not just about looking for jargon busters. So we're looking for something a little bit more. If we're just producing jargon busters, then that means we're talking a lot of jargon. And so this is really about thinking about the audience that we're writing for and writing for them. Now that does take time and effort, and and some organisations may find that a challenge to meet, but we believe that tenants should expect that. But it's also about being able to find simple information on websites without having to delve for hours to find it. So, what we'd be looking for on the front page of a website, you're not having to have a degree in website management and navigation to be able to find where the complaints policies are, for instance. So some of that simple information about getting involved. Who is my housing manager? Who is my housing officer? How can I contact them? All those bits and pieces which residents want to see fairly simply. What does that look like on your websites? So the next theme is resources for engagement. Now in this section, we're really looking to drive the agenda of residents having the appropriate levels of support, be that financial support, administrative support or moral support, because all those things help them achieve those positive outcomes that we're all looking for. So we're looking for organisations to have residents part of that discussion on resources for engagement. And yes, we are talking about residents helping to decide the engagement budget. Some people might balk at that. Some people might think that's a step too far. But as far as we're concerned, if residents are going to be part of developing an engagement strategy, which we think they should do, then helping to decide the budget that supports that engagement strategy is a bit of a no-brainer, for want of a better phrase. So also in this theme, we're also talking about reimbursing tenants for their time appropriately. So we're not just thinking about necessarily an expenses policy, which I would hope most organisations have just the bare minimums, but it's about thinking a bit more creatively about how we might reimburse tenants for their time, thinking a bit more imaginatively. So we're really looking forward to hearing some of the creative ways that landlords are dealing with this particular area. And the last theme is wider and community engagement. Now this looks to press organisations on the use of intelligence to support their engagement activities. So do their activities respond to their tenants, the demographics, the geography, etc.? Or have they just picked off the shelf a model of another landlord and stuck their organisational logo on it? So it's about, do you look at your organisation and where it sits, how it sits, what it does, when it does, why it does, and creating an engagement framework that responds to that. So that's really important, because that's what creates difference. That's what creates imagination. That's where creativity comes from, when you look at the environment that you sit within and the community you sit within. So that's the other thing. We're not just looking inwardly, it's about looking outwardly. Because this theme also tries to pick out that partnership behaviours that a landlord might have, how it demonstrates, how it'll interact and include tenants in regeneration improvement work. So it's how it's working locally with its partners, how is it working locally when it needs to work with its tenants on some major sort of community changing initiatives such as regeneration and major improvement work. So there's some real good work that could come out of this in terms of learning the lessons of the past and trying to really build some of those community connections that are going to be able to help that landlord develop in the future and work with more collaboratively. So we've come to the end of the themes, and this was a bit of a whistle-stop tour of those standards. I hope you found them interesting enough to download the full set. If you do, get on our website, tpas.org.uk, download them, take your time to digest them, see how your organisation meets them. For our members, they are there. Use them, and we're really interested to hear your views. If you're members, you can download a self-assessment form, which gives you a chance to work together to see where your gaps are and where you are particularly strong. So there's some real good work you can do together. And if you really think you meet them all, why not go down for an accreditation route? Because our accreditation products all driven directly off these standards. So thank you for listening. Hope you'll look out for future episodes and take care of yourselves.